So my name, I don't get the language that good.
Can you say your name again?
My name is Vince McIntyre.
And your age?
I'm 67 years old.
And where were you born?
I was born in the west of Ireland.
What's your occupation now?
I'm a farmer, and I do woodworking, various. A jack of all trades, you might as well call me. Yeah.
How long have you lived here?
I've lived here since 1979. I found this place by accident and decided to camp here with my girlfriend in 1979. She was a mountaineer, and we made our temporary camp here. And here, 30 years later, we're still here.
What made you decide to move up here? This place?
I just needed. I had been living in a big wall tent, and I burnt it down, and I needed another place to camp, and it was just a temporary solution. Yeah. Yeah.
So when you moved here, did you have a plan or?
When I come here, it was a base camp to go on the mountain.
Oh.
Yeah.
Does it feel more permanent?
It feels very permanent in the sense that it feels like home. This is most at home I feel any place since I left the place I was born. So this is where I decided in the world to settle down.
Was there something special about this place that made you feel like this was a good place to settle?
Definitely, it was a beautiful place, and when I come here one time to help somebody get firewood, there was an old clear cut, and all the trees were down, but it was so beautiful, the panorama of the mountains and the lake and all that, that I said, oh, that'd be a nice place to live. Yeah. When Amber was, my daughter was 2.5 years old, I'd brought her up here because my girlfriend at the time, we were, both of us were homeless, and I was wondering where we were going to spend the winter. And there was an old man in Johnson's Landing. He wanted me to get him some poles for his chicken house to build, and he knew there was nice straight cedar poles up here. So I take Amber up here and we get some poles, but in the process Amber forgets her red shoes, So I had to bring her back up here to get her red shoes, so I brought my girlfriend up here, and I was just wanting to see how she felt about the place, and she was just totally amazed by the place. So from there I knew it was, from there I knew, both of us like it here. So, and then this was in October of 1979, so we wanted to make a camp. And back then I could really work hard, and we wanted to make it so it wasn't really visible or whatever, because it was on Crown land. So I started digging down here, and she helped me, and we made that little downstairs place with a stove. I cut off a 45-gallon drum and put a hole for a lid and put it on the ground. That was our fire for the winter. And was putting the roof on the snow, and that's how we started here. Yeah. And then the next spring, we were wondering if it wasn't too cold to grow a garden up here, so we planted. And she was a gardener, and she loved the whole horticulture thing. She was a beautiful gardener, flowers. She knew all the Latin names of every plant in the forest out here. Yeah.
Was that Gladys?
That was Gladys, yeah.
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 Can you say more about the first year here and what it was like to be here throughout the seasons?
I guess we were, first of all, the whole feeling of being illegal, being on Crown land and not that's something we had to deal with. whether or not we were going to get eviction notice or whatever. And that kind of stayed with me for a few years, and then I got over that, and as I got over that, then I become more home, because I got more attached to the place now, and now this is it for me probably. Yeah.
When you say that before that you didn't have a home, you went from. Did you? What was your feeling of what home was before you came here and started making a home?
When I think of home, I think of the little thatched house I was born in the west of Ireland. That's I still think of it as that. But I felt like a drifter, a traveler.
Did you run out of money at a certain point, or how did you come back?
Yeah, I've never really been a money person. I've been more like I like to have money as a tool, but to have money to give to my daughter or pay or buy a new truck, no, I'm not into that. I prefer to do things the more uncertain way, what you can come up with. Like I've lived a lot of my life with. Like I started out my life wanting to make lots of money. I went and worked in the Arctic and ran big machinery and worked long shifts and saved money. But then when I got out in the world, it went really fast, so it was never not very effective. And then I started traveling, and then I realized I went to San Francisco in 1969. Just blew the hole in my whole idea of what life was all about. And I seen the hippies and the free, and somebody gave me a bit of orange sunshine LSD, and it changed my life. Yeah, that's when I went to South America, and I felt time to go. And otherwise, if some of that hadn't happened to me, I would have gone back up to northern Manitoba and worked for another year and made money and gone to work on an oil rig somewhere, or learned skills and got my tickets and stuff. Yeah. When I went to South America, like I was drinking a lot of beer, and just people I ran into, and I ran into this gangster guy from California. He was a gun runner in Central America, and he had a big car with diplomatic plates on it and all that. So I end up in jail in Panama with this guy. And when I got out of there, when I said goodbye to Jack, he bought our way out because he had money or whatever, or some of his associates did. And so after that, and then all my stuff got stolen by the police. When I had good gear that I'd bought in San Francisco, and a camera, and stuff that I was going to be a regular, look good on the road. But then I didn't have anything when I get out, and what am I going to do? But I met these Peace Corps workers they were coming back from Bolivia or somewhere, and they had camping gear, and they gave it to me. So I ended up, my tour around Latin America was in kind of paramilitary looking stuff. It wasn't a good way to travel, because you were a bandito right away. Yeah, you're singled out. But a lot of it was without money, and then I worked my way even there. It was and when I got to Brazil, and I got on boats, and went in the Amazon, but mostly with work, and I could. What's one valuable thing I learned in the Arctic was how to run machinery and winches and hoisting equipment. So when I told the captain of the boat that I could do that, you're on.
Yeah.
So they were, loading logs in the Amazon to bring up to Suriname or whatever so that was my ticket to getting on board the ship. Yeah.
Can you talk more about just learning by seeing other people do it, or observation, growing up with that? And how that informed, your.
I think for a person to learn horses out of a book is pretty difficult, and with information. A lot of people I find that with their first introduction to the horse, they treat it like a machine. Like you say whoa and the brakes are on, And to me, it's more like being on a boat in rough water. That there's always movement going on, and you always have to be in touch with the movement with horses. You can't just say, "Oh, I got that figured out," and then drift off. When you do that, your horses drift off. So it takes a lot of focus. For me, it's a discipline. It's actually maybe like somebody doing the yoga or something like that, because you really takes you out of yourself, makes you focus on, and yeah, you have to be like that to make horse thing work for you, and keep even temper. So if you get angry with your horses, you're in trouble. They feel that right away, and they don't. So it takes. You have to be stoical. Yeah.
I'd imagine that would be similar with other aspects of life.
Yeah.
This way.
I think it's a lesson right in the horses. It keeps you humble, because a tractor, people get on a big machine and they have that power. But with a horse, you have to be polite.
What are your thoughts on being a mentor and passing down this knowledge that you have, that's your own personal experiences from your past and also from what you've learned in life to the next generations, or people who want to learn, so that knowledge doesn't go by the wayside?
When I have people that come want to learn something of me, I just come and watch me. I'll show you how I do it. And that's where I start with people. That I have demand of people that people be observant. To actually explain stuff to people. I have a hard time with that, and that's not the way I like to do it. I don't want to come there. Like if you're in the field and doing things a certain way, I'll show you how I do it, and then I'll see how you get it. Yeah.
Who is Johnny?
Johnny?
Yeah.
He was a fellow that worked for me for off and on for a couple of years. He had potential, but he didn't get the fact that you had to be devoted. Like I left him in charge of the cows one time, and one cow got pretty sick because he hadn't been doing what he said he was doing. He'd been going off to the beach, spacing it all out and getting stoned, So I had a falling out over a cow. Yeah.
Is there something about the commitment or devotion to the life that you lead that is completely necessary, or how would you?
Well, I think in today's world it's not necessary, because when we depend on an industrial system for our survival, we might protest all that and think that we're defeated and so on, but it still works, eh? But if we want to get our power back and be able to do things for ourselves and not pay other people to live our lives for us, we have to be devoted. We have to learn stuff and stick with it. It will define our lives instead of us defining it by saying what, maybe I'd like to go to Thailand for the winter or whatever, like that's a whole new concept to the world, eh? And I can remember when people heard of people immigrating to New York, for instance, from the west of Ireland, and going there, and they could work like 5 or 6 days a week and have vacations. We didn't quite know what vacation meant. It was a new idea that you could have a holiday, and because people with small farms and cattle and all this stuff going on all the time couldn't even have that idea. But so when people learned about this other way of life, they felt like what they were doing was drudgery, eh? That was that they didn't have. They couldn't travel. They didn't have the affluence. They didn't have the money. So it was poverty along with that simple lifestyle. But if for somebody to go back like I done, it's pretty rare. To have that, because I remember thinking when I was a child, when I was herding cows for an old lady in my neighbourhood, and for me it was lonely because away from my brothers and sisters. I'd rather be playing and doing other stuff. I remember thinking when I grow up I'm never going to do this. And a lot of people felt like that about that. And then when I immigrated to southern Ontario, we all worked on market gardens, and there was no Canadian kids working there. They were all refugees, Hungarians, and we were the only Irish kids there. But there was, kids from away, and Canadian kids went off to the beach on the bicycles in the summer. We crawled rows. So when you have that experience and you decide you want to get away from it was a few events in my life happened to make me realize, hey, that was a good life, and now that I appreciate that I had them experiences because they give me endurance for what I do. And if kids don't have that, like I know people that are 40 years old and they're still babies. They're still like they have this, they treat me like a parent or something, But you should be over that. You should be over that. We have lost that concept of manhood and growing up and all that somehow, That you don't have that extreme whatever it is to push you out in the world. At one time it was a young fella'd go to sea because he couldn't get along with his father, for instance. And that's natural. That's natural to be forced out of the nest, just like the grizzly bear beats up her cubs, send them away, give them a good beating, and then you won't follow her around anymore, And our nature is the same, to be ousted out of the nest at a certain. But with all the infrastructure and all the industrial whatever makes us so that we don't have to grow up. We don't have to go it on our own and whatever. I left home because I didn't get along with my dad, and I got as far away as possible from family because of all the tragedies associated with my childhood. And I ended up going to South America for a year, and then when I come back, I went as far north as I could go. That was to Dawson City, and there was something like I was getting away from, that back then I never thought I'd ever settle down, that I'd always be a traveler. And when I come here, it kind of grew into the place, and my daughter was born here in the Kootenays, so that's probably the reason that it made it home for me. Yeah.
So you had said at another time that you didn't want to have to go to work for somebody else. At a certain point in your life, you realized that you wanted to do something that like
was that meaning? It had some meaning to it, yeah.
What was it that drove that decision, or what were the circumstances around
that? When I hit my mid-40s, I decided, this work that I'm doing is totally meaningless to me, going out there and putting 3 bags on and making a bunch of money. And any amount of it, I got so that this is just playing figures for the government, that it's not very effective, and it justifies cutting down more forests. So I decided I'm going to try not to have to do this, and that's when I decided to farm. Right?
What did that feel like?
It felt like overwhelming, and wondering if I could do it or not, and then. My horses are untrained, and the only experience I've had with horses up to that was my childhood of mare watching. I didn't really have to take any of it seriously or anything like that. But I decided, I remember thinking, you know, riding around in a tractor in southern Ontario, thinking I'm not going to do this in my life ever again. So maybe that was some inclination of that to actually, because I remember fondly my childhood of, you know, the horses and cattle and all that way of doing stuff, and watching horses and carts going down the road and how it was done. And you know, I'm less extreme now. Like, I've come around to more technological stuff, but then I wasn't. This is the way I wanted to do it. And so I had horses to train and harnesses to figure out and machinery to fix and so on. So it was pretty overwhelming. I'm totally lazy. Even fixing my hands, I let things go too far before I'm not motivated that way. So what motivates me is working with other people, but it has to be not just, it has to have some meaning to it. Like people like you, for instance, that come into my life that I've worked with, they're my heroes. Yeah, we have to have our heroes, and we have to have our, you see the good in humans, and that's the way I find the good in humans, the people I work with. I find out who they are and what they're made of. And I might seem harsh on people and hard on people, and I am, and I'm never going to be different, because I demand your attention. You know, this isn't something that you might play at, you know, because I don't play at it, you know. I got run over with my horses and smashed up, and I got up and I kept doing it, yeah. So it's, to me, life is do or die, and then you're living, you know. When I started growing food, I come to realize that this is really important, to feed my family and my friends and people around me. And when I come to Canada first, me and my sister and brother, we went to work for this Dutch family, and they had a mixed garden, market garden, and they grew hay and grain, and they had chickens and cows and all this stuff. And then when we moved away from that part of Ontario, and we moved down closer to Toronto, and we went to work in a market garden closer to Toronto, and that was already being industrialized. It was like long rows of like one thing, like green onions, like a 3-ton truckload of Dutch sets would come in. We had to plant all of them, you know, like kids out there. So it was totally monotonous. And we didn't get to go around to the summer cottages around Georgian Bay to help the farmer deliver and sell to the summer cottages. All this was cut out. We were just robots. And that's when I began to hate it. Began to hate farming. And I swore I would never do it in my life again. I figured that was the change, and that isn't what I'm ever going to do. So that's formed really strong in me then. And in 1979, I went to an old farmer in the Cusp, Christopher Spicer. He was an old Englishman, and he'd been farming over there since 1948. He'd come back from the Second World War, and he was a veteran, and he got land over there. And he was a farmer in England, and he was a market gardener. And I went into his, I went to buy vegetables of him in 1979 because my girlfriend knew about him. And I walked into his farmyard on Halloween, and it was like going back 100 years. And I seen, you know, his piles of onions and potatoes and cabbages and all this, and how he did things, and that's when I decided that this is what I was going to do. I wanted to go work for him, but he wouldn't have it. He was just so organized in his own system, you know. But that's when I changed my mind about farming. That's when I thought, hey, I might do this someday. Yeah. One time it was a harvest time, and I had all our vegetables just about, because before I had a good root cellar to store them all, and there was people that wanted them, but I hadn't time to deliver them. But there was this cold spell that come in October, and Amber was here, and I was sleeping in a tent up in the loft up here, and I got up in the middle of the night and I says, hey, it's cold. And then I figured, then I noticed the water, there's big icicles hanging down everywhere, and then it felt like it was getting colder and it was clear. And then I go look at the thermometer, and it was -8 already. And all my veggies are out under the tarp. They feel 2 in the morning. So I come down and I get Amber awake, and I said, hey Amber, we got to go to work. Oh, and she says, and you can see her eyes open and look at me to see if I hadn't lost my mind. Maybe I'm sleepwalking or something. And I says, yeah, it's getting cold. We'll have to go down and get some insulation on that. And there was about $8,000 worth of vegetables under the tarp. So we get her up, and she's a bit grumpy, but we go off and we get planer shavings and hay bales and break them all up, and by 10 in the morning we had that pile saved. But if I had that time saying, oh, I can't deal with this, or I'm too tired, or maybe it'll be okay, I might not be farming today, because I wouldn't have been able to afford to. So a weak moment can stop you if you have a real life. Just like a creature out there in the woods, if they have a weak moment, they're done. So it's only humans that can have that privilege, saying, oh, I think I'll just curl over with a good book today. I like stories. I like to talk to people. I'd like to visit more people. I'd like to get their stories. I'm doing a lot of talking, but I'm totally curious about his story, and about your story, and about her story, and the whole, that's, I love stories, yeah, and I like to tell stories, and I like to try and make them real,